If what you're doing is pushing the limits of possibility in life, leadership, business, the marketplace, then likely you're going to hit some limits, your own limits from within, limits that others will offer you as to why your idea will not succeed. So how do you deal with that? How do you continue to hold the vision of limitlessness when facing into limits? There's a number of different ways forward around that. Let me offer you 3 different tips that may be useful for you to begin. Number 1, make sure you're dealing with not just distinguishing real limits, but perceived limits. So most of us know when we face into limitations, there are real, legitimate constraints, oftentimes budget, time, physical ability, etc. But there's also perceived limits. And it's probably easiest to illustrate this with a physical example. Recently, a colleague of mine just ran a very prestigious marathon. And in listening to his journey in getting to a 5-minute mile, which by the way is amazing, we explored what his perceived limit was within reaching that, as well as his actual limits beginning. If you were to ask me to run out the door right now and run around the block, I know that my inability to hit a 5-minute mile it's real, it's legitimate. I'm not a runner, I don't like it. So that is a real limit right now. My inability to hit a certain performance target is real. At the same time, if I were to say, my ability to get to that level of training, fitness, exercise, nutrition, etc., it's not possible, then that's a perceived limit, right? Because I won't know until I try. I probably would have to be motivated to actually do this as well, right? But with that motivation and persistence, then who knows what limit I might be able to overcome in that journey. And indeed, that is the journey of something like the 4-minute mile, where many, many years ago, it was thought that it was not humanly possible for human beings to perform at the level of a 4-minute mile until Roger Bannister broke that limit. And through his record, then it inspired others. If he can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it, right? So every time we actually discern what's real and what's perceived, and then we overcome a perceived limit, we're not only creating momentum forward for ourselves, we can actually inspire those around us to do the same, to distinguish what's real and what's perceived, and then move forward despite it. Today, hundreds of runners hit the 4-minute mile across all different spectrum of diversity of background and experience. So what's the 4-minute mile limitation that you have placed in your world, and how is that simply perceived? There might be a real portion of it, but what is perceived? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, if you are really trying to have meaningful impact in your team, your organization, the marketplace, then likely you are seeing something new, a vision of possibilities that others don't quite see yet. And as such, that's a little bit of a solo journey. There's a piece of your journey that will be you articulating that solo, and maybe not too many people following you at the beginning. Entrepreneurs know this well, right? I mean, Steve Jobs talked a lot about if you're crazy enough to believe that you can change the world, then those are the people that actually can change the world. And at the beginning, it can be lonely. So have the courage to know that maybe you are seeing something that others can't see yet. And if you don't have a whole lot of people around you yet, it may be that there's something we need to widen in people's perception to help them see what's possible while you work to make this reality happen. You might be just seeing the future slightly earlier than others can. So be strong and courageous in going and expect that solo journey for a portion of it, knowing that this is a chance to attract just 1 or 2 others who kind of see it as well and can help you further develop the idea. Thirdly, know that and be prepared for opposition. So when we introduce something new as a possibility that others have maybe a lot of proof on why it won't work, maybe there's data, there's reports, there's statistics that show that this won't work, it hasn't worked, it will never work. And the more polarized that we get today, oftentimes people have parked themselves on one end of the spectrum or the other with loads of data and experience, and they wall themselves off from listening to or critically thinking through or discerning if there's some perspective on the other side that they could actually benefit from hearing in order to evolve their own way of making impact and as well as their own belief around themselves. So the third tip is know and expect opposition. And when you hear it, when it comes as limitation and proof as to why you cannot do what you're thinking of doing, look at it as an invitation to practice curiosity. So rather than getting into kind of either polarization where people withdraw and they're planting flags and camps on either side of a continuum, actually leaning in, opening, and asking more questions. So your data is the following. Okay, help me understand what's underneath that, and what is it that you're mostly concerned with, right? Statistics to me are simply examples of how other people have handled similar situations in the past. It may or may not resonate with what I'm trying to achieve. The study may or may not apply to what I am after, but maybe by practicing curiosity, I'll uncover some nuance that I hadn't thought about. And then the two different perspectives will help us become even more expansive in our thinking, not only around the idea that I originally had, but maybe shaping each other's points of view. So those are 3 tips. I hope that they help you think beyond limitations that others may have around you. Please like and comment on this video if this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and YouTube.